This is Kenya from spiritualvitaminc, the podcast. Truth alert. Living for God is the biggest win. Knowing how? Now that's the question. Story by story, we present and break down God's holy word and give practical tips on how to apply kingdom principles today. So stay tuned. So this is the continuation of mental health in the church. This is part 2. Yes. If you have not listened or viewed mental health in the church part 1, I suggest that you watch that before you watch this episode so that it'll make sense. Part 1 was amazing. Part 2 is not going to disappoint. Pastor James Edwards, who is a LCSW, and I discussed a variety of issues regarding mental health in the church. God blessed us. All I have to say is get ready for the conclusion of mental health and the church. Yes, Lord. Yes, Lord. Okay. We're going to switch gears a little bit here. Okay. Men of color. I don't really like that label, people of color. I don't know. It bothers me, but nonetheless.
That's a term that people understand. Yes.
Men of color and mental health. Now, we know that there's an issue just generally how Americans view mental health, such a stigma that it like, and with stigma, there's hiding, there's shame, and then there's all these ridiculous myths that just are not true. But because those myths can be so pervasive and prevailing, that to even say to oneself that I struggle with mental health is a lot. So there's that layer with regard to mental health. Then you have just the Christian layer, and then the African-American church. Now you have men, and then you have men of color and mental health. So there's just so many issues off the bat. How does an African-American man, how can he break through all of this, all of the layers, the iron gates, the hurdles that are on fire? How does he clear the hurdles to get to someone like you when there's so much against him, like from the jump? How does he get through to get to you?
You know, I would say start wherever it's most realistic. There are, as you said, there's many stigmas. There's many, I'll just briefly just go through some of them, because some of it is people of color, are the barriers in general, male and female, and some are more specifically for men, and some are specifically for Black people. But there is overall, there is I would say, especially in minority communities, there's a sense that to go to therapy means that you're acknowledging that you're broken. And it's like that, like I've tried everything else and I finally run out of resources. Now I have to like cry uncle and, admit that life has whipped me. And now I've got to succumb to therapy. And it's almost like, walking to the electric chair. It's like, all right, it's finally gotten that bad. I'm going to the shrink. I'm going to that person, lay on the couch. I'll just say it and with my white counterparts, sometimes they see therapy as a luxury. Like what a privilege it is that I can sit down and talk to someone about and help me process the things I'm going through. It is considered a luxury to have two minds thinking about one issue and to bring another perspective that I hadn't thought and say, is it me? Is it them? Is it my husband? Is it my wife? Is it my coworker? Am I tripping? But in our community, I would want to say, because of slavery, we've taught ourselves secrecy. What goes on in this house stays in this house. Even if it is someone, and it's not just mental health. Even if Big Mama is sick, she ain't putting her in her home. You ain't going. How dare you put Big Mama in the home? She might have a bed sore. We're gonna figure it out. But and it was almost even and for a while, like I said, it broke through first with the medical health, where it was like, okay, maybe it's not bad to put someone in a place where they can tend to them 24 hours, where we can't. Maybe we're doing more harm than good than to keep them with us, knowing that we can't get off work and have to leave them by themselves. Maybe we should put them somewhere like that. And in mental health, being progressive, that maybe it's not a terrible thing. And again, I'll say the pandemic has forced men who, I think that's one of the signs that I know the pandemic was bad, not just medically, but emotionally on people, because every therapist I know has had more calls from people of color and men than we have had before this all hit. And
Wow.
so, and it wasn't just their girlfriend calling for them, or their wife calling, or someone else calling for them, or trying to convince them that they need help, or let me get the resources and I'll tell them they need to call you. They've called themselves. So this has been really rough. So there's also a distrust. I'll say it, this is the big elephant in the room, that there's a distrust of any method of intervention that's Eurocentric, because they're historically, and rightfully so, historically, whether it is the Tuskegee Airmen, or whether there is other things, whether there's a distrust of CPS, case managers, there's a do not tell our family's business, because they're the systems, quote unquote, the man's values, the system's value doesn't match our family values. And if you tell too much, then they will assume that we're not qualified. And it will be almost like a re-traumatization of master coming in to take over our family and split our family up. And so even if there was something dysfunctional going on in our families, we wouldn't see it that way. We would see it as, don't tell them folks nothing. And so, and if you tell them something, they're going to use it against you somehow. So we already come into agencies such as therapy, like, why are you asking these questions? Why are you being in my business? You're trying to mess up something. You're going to snitch on something. So we already have a level of distrust. So sometimes women do better with talking, and sometimes people do better even with a female therapist, because they feel perhaps there's more of a nurturing nature, or because some people have been abused by men, they don't want to meet with a man. I've noticed that too. But for men, I've noticed more so now, they may want someone, if possible, that looks more like them.
Okay.
And that's, some studies show that it doesn't necessarily make a difference as far as whether a person can provide support or not, but that still may be their preference. And it may be harder for them to find that, because I know as an African-American male therapist, there's not a lot of us. But there's some people who want a male that they feel like they don't have to be beat up by the female perspective per se, or someone who's going to take their girlfriend's side or the wife's side, but someone who they feel can get what it means to be a male, and someone who can get what it means to be a minority, who they don't have to explain the cultural nuances, because it's not always just the race itself per se, as far as understanding the culture. If I'm loud, it don't mean I'm angry. It doesn't mean I'm being threatening. If I express a certain word, I don't want to have to translate it to you and explain, why are you upset about this? I just want somebody who gets it, so that when I say what I say, you understand the context already. And so if a person who doesn't assume that I'm being malicious or running a scam, if I ask the therapist to write something, I don't want somebody going to say I'm uncomfortable all the time because they suspect that I'm trying to get extra time off work or whatever. They don't, because sometimes there is a level of higher level of suspicion, like when it comes to minority males. If they say they have an issue with their child or with the legal system, criminal justice system, there sometimes is a little extra, maybe unconscious layer of judgment towards them, and they want someone who they feel will not judge them for what they're dealing with. And as a man also, sometimes as men, we're not allowed to have a full spectrum of expression like women are taught. Sometimes there's only a few acceptable ways of expression, frustration, sometimes anger, through their sexuality. I'm trying to think of something else, but sometimes that's for some people, that's the only time they can express what they're dealing with, or is to break something, to fight, or to get quiet, or to avoid. And sometimes they're not allowed to let their hair down, so to speak. So it takes a very safe space so that they can say what they say. And even if they don't fully say what they say, you can get what they're saying when they don't say it.
Wow.
I hope that answered your question. I know I went on a tangent right there, but there is a great need for men, but it's also a great need for men to feel respected and contained when they bring what they bring into the room.
Okay.
Yeah.
As you were talking, and even researching before this episode, I was looking at how African Americans in choosing a therapist, how if a therapist isn't African American, how they need to be aware that biases do exist,
Hmm.
and to be culturally sensitive, and to be culturally aware. Is that true? Among I mean, I guess it could be true among doctors. Maybe a doctor, when they see an
Definitely.
African American, they're kind of like, I know for me, one time, I went to this new doctor, and I was late getting to them, only because the line was like, something happened. Maybe somebody went on to break the line to get into this lady who was Caucasian. To get into her, it was like 10 minutes. So once I get in, she automatically just assumes that I have something going, like shenanigans. And I'm like, what? How do you just assume all of this, and you don't even know you don't even know, like, the first thing you say is all of this stuff. How now would you have treated me different if I had not been African American? Like, for real. So I know that it exists in the medical community,
Yes.
but does it still exist in the mental health community? When
I
I'm
believe
choosing
that.
a provider, does biases exist among you all?
I
You
think
know.
that biases exist among humans,
Okay.
and we are trying to be more mindful of it.
Okay.
There is, I'm sure you're aware that there's a lot of training in cultural competence. The training I prefer is the training in cultural humility, which is the training that I don't know. And so even if you train your cultural competence, that Asian people do this and Latino people do that, that still isn't one size fit all. And you can be offensive even saying, trying to switch up because I'm with this group, or switch up because I'm with a female or male, so, because everybody doesn't fit that. And so you still have to go into working with whoever you're working with an open mind, and even an openness of acknowledging, is there something that I should know? If there is because we all step on landmines and don't know it.
Yeah.
There are I know some other times other cultures may refer to our seniors by their first name, and they don't know that in our community we don't do that. We don't
Amen.
refer. We don't call Big Mama Mahalia. You better call her Miss Jackson, or
Yeah.
and you can offend her whole family, not even knowing that you offended them, just because that's a cultural thing. And so just be mindful that there are cultural differences, and be mindful to try to make it right when you step on those toes. Like sometimes you could say, well, we're concerned about the child. Child, do I have your permission to talk to your parent? They don't know that in Black culture, you just made the child the king of our family, and you just
Mm-hmm.
reduced our rank.
Right.
And we may not come back, and even though that's the way it's supposed to go, just having a certain level of sensitivity that there is a hierarchy in the Black family, that you don't ask the child if your parent got permission, or at least even if you have to do what you got to do, acknowledge that I know this is going to sound a little strange, so forgive me if it sounds weird, but this is how I got to ask it, and that could reduce the offense that could come. So yes, there are biases, and yes, there are offenses that come culturally, but not all of them are intentional. Um, but I think that as being open, and even a parent enough to say, "Hey, I'm gonna mess up somewhere. Please let me know." Um, and and I personally asked my client to grade me. How did it go? How did I feel like? Did you feel like I was listening to you? How do you feel like this session went? So that I can, while I'm trying to support them, they can also support me at being better at what I do.
Okay. Wow. Um, so I'm going to go back to African American men in particular. They deal with so much is put on them.
Mhm.
The everyday stressors, on top of staying alive, because you're going outside, and then
Yeah,
you see,
yeah,
you see somebody who, law enforcement agency, a person, and now your
yes,
anxiety is going through the roof. That's a lot to have to bear on the daily. And that's not even dealing with family and job and just all the stuff and trying to stay out the system and all that. What are just some simple coping skills that an African American man may be able to utilize? What and I'm specifically saying that for a reason, because I know that there's just so much put on African American men in society. We know that we all go through, but I personally feel that just in regards to African American men, that it's just it's a weight to bear on a daily basis.
Yes. Well, one, um, I'll say African American men. I'll even say African Americans in general. And also, the reason why I say that is because sometimes we, as a culture, like I said earlier, we can go through a cultural, historical trauma, and we just make that our new normal. And a lot of people of color, because I'm sure most minorities have their own story, but Black people in particular, we live in a level of anxiety that shouldn't be. And whether people say it's the media did it or whether reality did it, there's a certain level of anxiety that comes to me when a police pulls me over that doesn't come to another person, and or there is a certain level of I won't say helplessness, but a certain level of more of vulnerability that comes, that is a regular feeling like that I'm not sure if there's a person that I can call for help and it not go another way. I don't know how this outcome would be. And we just your microaggressions, or if you didn't get that job, you don't know if it's because of color or something else. That's a thing that we go through on a regular basis. It's normal for me for someone to watch me when I go in the store.
Yes.
I mean, so that's not an unusual thing. If I go to Neiman Marcus or go to Bloomingdale's and someone pays a little extra attention when I'm looking at the jury, that's not a strange thing for me. And so we live at a certain level of trauma that we have normalized, but I think there is a cultural PTSD that we have that makes us, so no wonder our blood pressures are higher and our lifespan is different, and no wonder even if we don't access services, as you said before, for several reasons, but even if we're already in poverty because of even though the laws have changed, we're still suffering from the results of what happened then. We weren't allowed to buy property then. We weren't allowed a lot of things then, and so we're still catching up, so to speak. And so, so it's not just that that they put us in the neighborhoods that tend to be more violent or more pollution. We have more asthma. We have more blood pressure. But it's also if we're in that stress all the time, then our body isn't designed to deal with all that stress all the time. So that's just as a people. But as males, it's always been an issue of figuring out where do we fit. And so definitely there is a need to acknowledge that you're not alone in this, and that you it is okay to get help. You don't have to try to be Superman and figure it out, because we'll hold it in. We'll just hold it in and just shake it off and figure it out. Because as a man, there's a sense that you can't fail. Because you're not just, even if you're single, I'm not doing this for me. I'm doing this for my mama, for my family, for for your spouse, your kid. So there's a certain level of a sense of, besides everything else, I'm doing this for the family. Even if I heard one person say that that you could even have a party and the wife may be thinking about the clown and the cake and whatever. The man will be thinking about the bills. He'll be thinking of, how will I pay for this? Because I have to be the foundation of this. And so we tend to hold all our stuff, whatever our stuff is, in to, so to speak, help other people get over, and our life gets cut short because we never deal with ours. And again, what we consider, that's just life. This is just how it is for me. We don't address it. No, this is not life. This is trauma. This is depression. This isn't just anger, and also it's easier to say I'm angry than to get at the root of it and say I'm depressed.
Wow.
Because anger is a secondary emotion, which usually is something underneath it. Is usually some level of depression or some other anxiety. Something is underneath it, but we express it through anger because that's, again, the only acceptable way. And so you get late, but then you can't do that either because then you get labeled as the angry
Labeled.
so
Yes.
someone else would be labeled as assertive, but you're angry or
True.
threatening. Now, I know in my profession, I tend to keep it, and I think I'm a nice, personable, bubbly person, but I also know that I better be because in a
Mm.
profession where I'm surrounded by women, I can't afford the threat of I don't feel comfortable with you, or I feel this when I'm in the room with you. I don't want to be in the room with that man. So you can't be a big, tall black man and make someone feel unsafe.
It's true.
Just by your presence, it becomes a weapon. Becomes
Sure
a
does.
so you have to almost shrink yourself down, make yourself less threatening, so that you can cope in a world that can't handle the unfiltered version of who you are. So, and code switching is not and also in our community sometimes some successfully learn the code switch and some despise the concept of code switching because they feel like I'm not keeping it real anymore. I'm selling out by
Mhm.
learning how to adapt for different cultures. And I think that, and sometimes there's a trade-off. You may have to learn to take that off and put this on. And that's what it is. And we definitely, you need to be able to talk about it, find brothers and it doesn't always happen in therapy. Sometimes just finding a good friend to talk to find a community, whether it's the barbershop or whether it's wherever it's at,
Amen.
the deacons at the church, to just talk, because you can't keep this in you. You have to talk, and you have to find someone who has a little bit further along the journey, because not all of us have mentors. Not all of us have had people who, at least not authentic mentors, who can say, I've been there and I've made it through. Some people can say, can say they've been there, but they can't say they necessarily successfully got to where we're trying to get to. So it's important to have brothers, and it's also important to have mentors. And some of that may include coming to the office, like I said, like do what I do. I would love it if it did. For some, because of the stigmas, they may not feel as comfortable. And I, as a therapist, because I understand that there are these layers, I would never pressure someone to share more than they feel comfortable. Actually, I discourage them from sharing everything in the first session, because sometimes that has its own consequences too. You feel like you overshared, and now
Oh,
you're traumatized because you said too much. But I definitely want people to earn my trust, to build that rapport, and say, get a feel. Let me see if you like what you hear. If you think this is a good match, a good vibe. And if you don't think it's a good match, then I'm not mad at all. I'm glad you made the step of trying to reach out to somebody. I want you to find somebody else who you can connect better with. And I think that's what a lot of men want, is to connect with someone who can respect them and who can allow them to, even in therapy, to make certain choices. Don't come at me like I don't know what I'm doing. Don't come at me like I'm stupid. Because whatever you've done, you've done what you had to do to survive to this point.
amen.
And so, um, and so, when I come at them as an expert on their life, even if it's a bad decision, it's the decision that they had to make at that time. Even if it's a maladaptive coping skill, it's what they had to do to survive that season. And I even know some people who certain skill sets were necessary at their childhood, let's say, or in certain communities, but it doesn't transfer well when they move to another community or when they work at their job or whatever. So what was a successful surviving skill at this point of their life, they have to learn how to switch it at another point of their life, and they have to do that switching with the support of someone who won't disrespect their journey, if that makes
Wow.
sense.
Yes, it does. As you were talking, you said as a black man, you because you work with women, it can't be said that you make them uncomfortable.
Mhm.
And also you said like we have to almost shrink ourselves because they can't handle this unfiltered, this raw, or I was thinking in my head, authentic self.
Yeah.
And I know just for being an African American woman, I know that is very true.
Mhm.
I'm used to going into the store and having women pull their purses back.
Mhm.
I'm used to walking into the store. I haven't had it happen for some years now,
Mhm.
but having the associates come to me only and say, "Would you like me to put those clothes up at the register for you?"
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so we shouldn't have to function like that. That is a constant state of PTSD.
Mhm.
Or you see the police officer behind you and your mind starts going 1,000 miles an hour because
Mhm.
the truth is, there may be a million really amazing police officers,
Yeah.
but for that four or five that's like shooting people, and you hear these stories of this so and so got shot execution style, with George Floyd. Oh my goodness, in broad daylight. And then it's one after the next. It's one after the next. And so to be in a constant like state of heightened awareness,
Mhm.
um, code switching, you have to be like praying through just to walk outside of your door because can you make it back home? That's a lot for us as African Americans and in particular African American men to have to battle through. And it's almost like you don't have like a space to let your guard down.
Mhm.
And it seems like that's part of like the hindrance of like seeking help because you can't, because it's just it do will you make it back? If I
Yeah.
tell you all about this 15,000 pound weight on me, will I make it back? Will they make it back when they
Yeah.
start it, in therapy? Will they recover after they've told, after they've unloaded this weight? Will they make it back to some sense of normalcy, or will it be a new normal?
Yeah. And even that, even in relationships, where they're told, even at home, not just right, but they're told, open up, share your feelings. But if I open up and share my feelings, will these feelings be used against me later? Will it be weaponized against me? Will you teach me that I should have stayed quiet? Or will if I tell you where the belt is, will you hit below it? And
Wow.
so if a man, and I want to say that perhaps, I'll just say as Bishop Jakes, it sounds like something he would say, that men are, with that, like women are with infidelity, men are with trust. And so a woman may say infidelity is the biggest sin, but I think for men it is, if you can't keep my secret, or if I expose you my heart and you take it and rip it into shreds, at a moment of vulnerability, then that is a deep level of betrayal. So that also teaches men to go back in the cave, to not let that part out, because if it's anger or silence, I know how to deal with that. I can show you the part that ain't gonna hurt me, uh, but if I become vulnerable, if I do all of this, if I articulate it, will you judge me for my experiences or for my journey, for my feelings? Even if I'm wrong, you don't have to correct it from being wrong yet. Just acknowledge that this is how it looks like to me, not just how I feel. And we could get around to saying that's not the way it was, but you still have to validate the feeling. So I think therapy will help. There's one of the many avenues. I don't I'm not trying to demote any of the other avenues that we've used culturally, because culturally we've always, had Big Mama, the barbershop, the hair salon, Sunday morning church, altar call. Sometimes Sunday praise breaks and altar calls was scream therapy, was venting, was a cathartic release. Pastoral counseling sometimes was a spiritual therapy session, and I'm not knocking any of that. But in a lot of our families, Big Mama ain't there no more.
Amen.
And a lot of, and even some pastors, the way pastoring is changing, sometimes the accessibility of the pastor isn't always the same. And sometimes some of the pastors who did constant counseling for members weren't always available to their family. And so the church benefited, but the family went downhill. And so as pastors try to find balance in their life and try to keep their mental health well, they may not be as accessible to do all night counseling and all like that, and late night phone calls, because he might turn his phone off when he goes to sleep. So you still have to be able to learn other ways. And so therapy is definitely one, because you have an unbiased person who isn't vested in and don't know anybody in your family, don't know what's going on, and can still hear you out and still build rapport enough to give you an honest opinion and to help you gather tools to not just talk about what happened, but to deal with repairing who you are and your sense of self, and help you to change your perspective. Because sometimes when people think about therapy, they think, I'm just going to go talk to somebody and they're going to tell me, we're going to tell them all about who hurt me, who beat me, who abused me, who neglected me, tears and sad stories. And that can be a part of it, but it's not always about dwelling on the past. That part of the history of your past is what got you here. But the real work starts is, how do we go from where you are to where you need to be? And so where would you like to be in life in the future? And how can I support you in getting there? So it's not just about talking and crying. It's about strategizing so that you can do the work and get yourself healed. It's like you have physical therapy where you have to practice after an accident and practice walking. You have to also practice thinking.
Wow. Okay.
You have to retrain your mind, because your mind is a muscle, so to speak. You have to train it like a muscle. You have to tell your mind, I'm not going to think about that right now. I'm not going to just let my mind wander. You have to develop it. Even Paul said, he said about his body, I buffet my body, keep it under subjection. He said, be transformed by the renewing of your mind. You have to intentionally renew your mind. You have to intentionally change your mind. And you do well what you've been doing consistently. What you have already been practicing doing is what automatically happens. I'll say this, and this ain't your question, but I think it's part of the answer. The children of Israel were bound by Pharaoh in Egypt, but they are also bound in the wilderness, because although they were bound by Pharaoh's person in Egypt, after the horse and the rider were thrown in the Red Sea, they were still bound, because they were bound by his principles and his patterns. Because every time they had an inconvenient moment, every time they had a challenging moment, they said, boy, we wish we could go back to Egypt. We sure do miss their leeks and onions and garlic, because Egypt was in their autopilot. They were already trained and conditioned as slaves how to deal with Pharaoh. And so the wilderness had to be a place of renewing their mind, so that by the time they got to the promised land, they wouldn't run like a slave. So sometimes we can get out of that situation. We can move out of the abusive house, abusive relationship, distance ourselves from an abusive family member, or whatever the thing is. But that doesn't mean that we've changed our mind. So we are still shell-shocked from our yesterdays. And so when you get finished crying, when you get finished being frustrated, when you get finished being mad at the world, you got to go to work on your mind. And not everybody not everybody is an enemy. Not everybody is a potential abuser. Not everybody, all men ain't dogs, or all women aren't, or aren't whatever they think. That is your vision is skewed because of the perspective you have. I can see the way I see because of the glasses I wear. But if I had on some shades, I would see the world darker because of the perspective I have. the lens that I see the world in. And so sometimes it is not about changing the world. Like, if y'all don't make me mad, then I won't blow up. Well, you can't make everybody walk on tiptoe around you. You have to change your lens. So that's a part of therapy. That's a part of my life homework, is to renew my mind, because my mind has been tarnished by the things of yesterday, and my past experiences have taught me how to act today. And so if I want to be better tomorrow, I have to continue to change my mind and allow God to renew my mind. I read my Bible and I also learn some coping skills and some self-soothing strategies, and some stuff that perhaps I could have got from family, or could have got from, if things went right in a perfect world, but it didn't, and it's not a perfect world. So it's never too late to get better.
Wow. Wow. It is never too late to get better.
Yeah.
Wow. That's like a quote. I'm going to quote that.
That's a bumper sticker statement. That's the footer of somebody's email, right? Signature of the email.
Amen. It's never too late to get better. Wow. I think we're done with all these questions. I'm just trying to think here. What does the pastor LCSW do for his own mental health? Because
I wasn't ready for that.
that's a lot of you bear the load of a lot of people. So what,
True.
and that's just your profession, and then you bear the load of the church. So I mean, how do you maintain really, really great mental health?
And then I have then I have a 9 to 5. So I do a quality assurance with Alameda County from 9 to 5, and I do private practice therapy on my own time, and then I pastor. So that's a lot. So what do? I cry.
I mean, you don't have to go into like deep, but like, what do you, do you bike ride to
though what I do as much as possible. The gym is my friend. I love running, love weight training. I love going to the movies again, the pandemic took a lot of our stuff from us, so I can't go as often as I like to. And what I've learned, especially since the pandemic, I've got to set stronger boundaries, because as helpers, as a person who help is in my nature, I would love to support everyone. Like I said before, when I see especially an African American male say I want therapy, I would love to make room for everyone. But I found out a year or two ago that if I sit up and listen to every story and try to help everyone, it's gonna send me up the wall. And much as I'm smiling right now, I ain't gonna be smiling if I have to, because there is someone who can handle all your problems, but I'm not him. And so for me, I have to know when I've had enough, and find someone for me to talk to, and see how is their story triggering my story, and how is and even if I'm having a human moment or my own tragedy, it's okay. I have to be okay with saying I can't. We have to cancel for right now, because and I don't have to go into it. Just we have to cancel, and even learn to not have to give a reason. Just if it's no, it's just no, and I don't have to try to get your permission for it being no. And that has been liberating, because I would love to help all the members I can. I love to help all the clients. I love to, but I can't do that and still be a husband and a dad and a family, and that's too much pulling in different directions. So setting boundaries, keeping a calendar and sticking to it. I can give you these hours on Monday, and that's it. If you can't do that, then catch me next Monday, and be okay with that. To organize myself, to do leisurely activities, to try to stay healthy, because it's easier to eat anything because you're stressed, and you could say it's all right, I'm stressing, but to try to take control over not letting myself go like that, because I'm caring a lot, and to what I can delegate to other people, especially at the church. If they can help me, then I don't have to do like I had to do before, when I had to do it all. Let other people help me, and that's how I make it. And if I'm having a hard time, say it up front. I identify it. I don't have to act pseudo spiritual. if I'm having a hard time, say, you know what, this is a rough day for me, even the client, because I think I'm modeling for them how to act. I don't have to flip out or show up extremely late or come with attitude. Just as I'm having a hard time, if I act like I didn't hear you, I probably didn't. I just, not going on, but let's go ahead and talk. And I think by putting it out there, people can give you space to not be at 100.
Okay. So as we're winding down here, is it okay now? Now I am the saint.
Uh-huh.
I'm the
Uh-huh.
saint of God. I'm on the praise team.
Praise God.
I'm the virtual host. I'm the podcaster. I'm the daughter. I'm the licensed psych tech. I'm everything. Is it okay for me, the person who loves God, filled with the Holy Ghost, know the Word of God? Is it okay to say that I'm not okay today?
It is definitely. I would hope so. I would definitely. And it is definitely okay, and it is okay to know that for some people they may feel uncomfortable even when they say that, but that doesn't mean it's bad for you to say it. It just means you're not used to saying it. That's a muscle you're not used to exercising, and that muscle's a little stiff, but you need to keep exercising it. And I'm not okay today doesn't necessarily mean that I I'm going to be inconsistent or I'm going to be flaky, but it does mean it's okay to say I may struggle with this a little bit more. I'm going to try to do the best I can. I'm there. I'm a team player. I might have to play a different role in the team this time, but I'm still a part. I think that's definitely okay. Now, what I won't do is use my trauma as a get out of jail free pass for everything. To talk to people any kind of way, to deal with people any kind of way, to disappear and say I'm just going through stuff. I know we have our moments, but I don't want that to become a pattern or habit, that because I've been hurt or because whatever, because I woke up the wrong side of bed or because I'm sad, that I just throw everything out because I don't want to develop that pattern. And but it is okay to let people know that. And you could pray with me, but be aware. Just carry that.
Wow. That's very freeing, because there's times even, just a moment of transparency for my own self, and I think I think it's everything. It's African American and Christian, and we're supposed to, like the Goonies, never say die.
Yeah,
We
yeah,
never say never say die. So there's this in the back of my head that if I say today I really I'm struggling, like I'm
yeah,
battling through. It's a
yeah,
hard day.
uh,
To have to break to know that's okay
yeah,
is like very real.
yeah,
And sometimes you'll have people around you who, well, you gotta have, they'll rebut,
yeah.
and you gotta have faith, you gotta pray harder, and you almost feel like, my God, did I just get kicked off the spiritual team? And did God call my number and
Yeah.
I'm going home?
Am I not saved anymore because I'm
But
having
it's
a human
real.
moment?
That
Yeah,
is, Pastor, it's a very real thing in the church,
yes,
that
but
if
yeah.
you don't appear to have your spiritual degree on 10, or
Mhm.
if you're not flying high, that if you show any sign of it's viewed as weakness. And
Yes,
if you show any sign of weakness, that's like that's the red flag for the devil to come running. And
yeah,
so, as I get older, and as the Lord is helping me, and as I just interact with mental health professionals,
mhm,
I'm learning that it really is okay. But just, I guess, also understanding the people that are around you, that
yeah,
if something is said, like a rebut, like,
mhm,
they need to be educated too, because
yeah,
to have you in this box where you can't be real,
yeah,
at some point you're going to break out, the box is going to be shredded, and you're just going to
yeah.
go sideways, and we
Yes,
see that all the time.
and sometimes that's even more present. And the people don't want to talk about it because good help is hard to find, sometimes harder to keep. But sometimes the pressure is on, even when you are trying to be faithful, or you're a hard worker, even in the local church or whatever your fellowship may be. because as a person who's available, you'll be called on more. And even though you're willing to do it, you're a willing worker, but that also drains you with a smile, but it drains you. And so you can either be the faithful person that does everything, or that person that's letting the devil use you because you're not available to do nothing because you got burnt out. You're not available. And it sometimes isn't a healthy medium, or there isn't other people to support. Like we will say the pastor needs support, but we don't always acknowledge that workers and staff need support too. And sometimes that's just a part of your reasonable service, which is great. But sometimes we put ourselves more at risk of burnout because we spread ourselves too thin. And so I haven't been at my church. I'm the pastor, but I hadn't been preaching as much at certain times. And I know I'm supposed to press my way through, and I have been. And sometimes showing up has been all I could do. And I said, somebody else got it today. Pastor's grieving, and they already know. So that, and there's no pressure to try to be, because what good am I doing if I'm talking out of a place of pain anyway? And so I would prefer, I think there's a lot of members, I'm messing up, no time for us to really cut off. There's a lot of members that wish some pastors would say, I'm going to take the break today, because they would prefer you let somebody else who's okay minister than for you to be hurt, and all that hurt's coming out, and all that pain is coming out, and all that rejection's coming out, and you having to shut in because you don't want to go home, and you got to, and you're punishing people in the audience for your unresolved issues that you're dealing in your personal life. And so I even say I think it's okay even to say I want to support, but I right now it's hard for me to do this, or just communicate that. And we're all adults, and we should be able to do that without being penalized. And yes, it is a fight, but it's a good fight, and it's a fight of faith. It's not a fight of demons. It's a fight of faith. So I am fighting to keep my faith in the perspective it should be. So the warfare is normal. That's what the warfare is. It is, yes, I believe God, but I'm still feeling sad. So I'm gonna still do what I need to do, knowing that I'm feeling this, but I'm fighting it. I'm not getting beat up. I'm fighting. So don't penalize me for having a fight. I'm having a fight, and the fight is good.
Yes, Lord. Wow. Wow. Well, that's a perfect place to end. I want to say, my goodness, if people view this broadcast and they're like, my goodness, he's an LCSW and he's a pastor, he's saved. How can they reach out to you should they desire to?
I will tell them to go to my webpage, www.edwardslcsw.com, and send me an email, contact me on my website, or they can go to psychologytoday.com and look me up, and we'll take it from there.
Amen. So
If they
everything
need a good sermon, they can go to Joshua Church of God in Christ in San Pablo.
Amen. So all of the information. Okay, so Joshua Church of God in Christ, he's extending an invitation. If you need a good sermon, all the information that Pastor just talked about will be in the show notes. So links will be provided so that you can reach out to him should you desire to. And I want to say thank you so much for being on Spiritual Vitamin C. Once again, this is May, Mental Health Awareness Month. Pastor James Edwards, LCSW, has taken us to church and taken us to the office, and we was on the couch, and we was in the pew, and we was in the choir stand, and we was, we had the best of both worlds. And so the Bible tells us that with our mind we serve the Lord, and if our mind is in disarray, we're no help to the church, to ourselves, to our family, or to anybody. So it's really important that we mind our mental health. Any last I know you are a man who knows how to, I feel like you have this gift of being able to package something and just present it. So any last words?
I will say that if you are a spiritual person, if you believe in the Bible, when you look in the Bible, you will see all types of people in the Bible who are powerful and flawed and who had challenges. So whether it is a David who deals with aggression, or a Miriam who has sibling issues, or whether it is a Naomi, who's changed her name to Mara because she became bitter after losing her sons and husband. Whether it is a Job who ripped his clothes with sackcloth and ashes, and none of these people are demon possessed. Whether it is a Paul who said he was pressed to the point of death, who was dealing with so much ministry burnout and pressure. There are, whether it's a Jonah who was traumatized by the experiences with his Ninevites who oppressed Israel as a nation and was so filled with so much bitterness and unforgiveness that he didn't even want the Lord to save him. So whether it's Elijah who's running from Jezebel and depressed under the tree asking for permission to die, these are all people who had emotional moments, but had a loving, kind, gentle God, good God who was available to move them from where they were to where they needed to be. So I recommend therapy, but also recommend Jesus because I believe that we have someone. The way that you get better is that you believe that there is a power who can make it better. If I was on my own in an unjust system, in a system that is designed for me to not make it, if I was out here one against millions, perhaps I wouldn't be full of so much hope. But because I'm connected with someone who can take things that are in the wrong direction and turn it around, who can make ways out of no ways, I am commended to have hope. I am commanded to hope. I would have fainted, but I believed I would see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. So I encourage you to take that same hope. I believe there is goodness in your days, that there is going to be a better tomorrow. And I believe even that there is hope in Jesus. And so God bless you, and connect, find you a church and a therapist, and be blessed in Jesus' name.
Amen. Thank you, Pastor James Edwards of Joshua Church of God in Christ. And all his information will be in the show notes. To rate the podcast, we would love to have you rate the podcast. Please review. Please consider subscribing. Please consider financially supporting Spiritual Vitamin C, the podcast. You can connect with us via Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, or Facebook. We will see you next time. The next episode of May will be, of course, dealing with mental health. We will see you later. Please remember that life needs a dose of Christ. It was amazing, right? Mental health in the church, the conclusion. My prayer is that you were truly blessed. Should you desire to connect with Pastor James Edwards, his information is in the episode description. Please be on the lookout for a few more episodes regarding all things mental health coming soon. We are yet in the month of May. So Pastor James is just one of a handful of amazing mental health professionals that I had the expressed pleasure of interviewing. So once again, please be on the lookout for more episodes of Spiritual Vitamin C, the podcast, concerning all things mental health. So God bless you. And please remember, life needs a dose of Christ. If you desire to connect with Therapist Edwards or myself, everything you're going to need is in the show notes. If you're watching from YouTube, everything is linked in the description box. Would you please consider rating and review Spiritual Vitamin C, the podcast? I would be forever grateful. Would you also consider subscribing as well as financially supporting? Thank you for spending your time with me on today. You go throughout your week or maybe the rest of your day, please remember, life needs a dose of Christ. See you later.